with the pandemic, some people haven't seen family in multiple years. And if they've changed, if they've had gender affirming surgeries, if they have anything that changed with their looks, their names, their pronouns, those types of things, to be how to prepare for that, or how to be empowered to choose not to participate in that, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And what kind of support can people draw from depending on the decision they do make? And so I want to talk about, like, I want to normalize and talk about naming some of the things that people are going to, that they might experience, or the different experiences of different people. And I also want to make sure that you and I do at some point in this talk about what maybe some strategies or just some things that we noticed throughout the years that have been helpful for the clients. And I can talk about the things that I really strategize, like literally strategize
Like, how
with
do you get
clients.
through regardless
Yes.
of what you're doing? Like, what do I do to make it through this holiday season?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy. I'm here with Melissa. This is Keely Helmick. And Melissa, you want to introduce yourself first, since I'm the one who usually talks first?
Sure. I'm Melisa de Seguirant. I am a clinician with Connective Therapy Collective, also a bisexual, polyamorous, white person, one of your hosts.
Yay. And again, I'm Keely Helmick. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, as well as the owner of Connective Therapy Collective, and lots of other things. I'm queer, non-binary, queer femme. Right now, I'm going with solo instead of single. And I don't even know if I'm going to identify as solo poly, but just solo.
Just solo.
And yeah. And I was thinking about this because I think the word single has such a loaded term, and it's really taken over by like cis-heteronormative. If you're single, this is what you're doing currently. And I don't want to be lumped into that category.
I
So,
love that.
yeah. So if people want to know what I'm doing, I can talk about it, or you can DM me. But in the meantime, Melissa and I are doing this. This is kind of like a bonus episode as we prepare for the holiday.
You know, you needed some extra love around the holidays. So here we are. I think also as therapists, I remember early on into becoming a therapist learning about like, not that I didn't know what holidays were, but it hadn't occurred to me how busy I would become as a therapist around the holidays. So I'm excited that we're offering a little bit of extra support.
Yeah. And so talking about the holidays and recognizing that this experience, along with, I do have to just also point out that we just had daylight savings change. So we really have less and less light. And, being in Portland, Oregon, those of you that are listening that are in Portland, Oregon, or in Oregon, northern part of Oregon, know how this time of the season, it's gray, it's dark, it's rainy. And then on top of that, the holidays, which is a mixed bag for most people, really just adds this layer of extra therapeutic work.
Then you add in a global pandemic and we're all ready for like the world's most difficult improv scenes.
Yes.
That's what I've been telling people. It's like one of those prompts like, okay, and you're in a global pandemic. Go.
So Melissa, what would the title of your improv be?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I feel like I got to come back to that one. I don't know. I've always said that part of my handle now on Instagram is work in process, and I feel like that's always like autobiography. But I'm pretty sure someone's already taken that.
Well, mine would be all about, like, I really, really, really like Christmas music, but I don't like Christmas. And I really like food, but I don't like the commercialization, all the capitalism around food. I really, really like gifts, but I don't like giving gifts when it feels forced. Like I enjoy being out and about and see something that really like fits somebody. Like, oh, this would be a great gift for so and so or for so and so. But when I feel forced to have to give someone a gift because of capitalism and this specific time of the year, then I don't like it and I rebel against it. So I think I have a lot of dueling ways of thinking about things. So maybe it would be like DBT, holding two things to be true at once, dialectical behavioral therapy.
Both seeming to be opposite, yet both true.
Yes, exactly. So, Melissa, do you want to share a little bit when we were talking about holidays, and obviously we're talking about the queer perspective and talking about all the different relationships this time of year and specifically thinking about holiday time, and you want to share a little bit what you told me and where you're at and kind of what we were thinking of as we moved into this episode?
Yeah, one of the things that came to mind, and as I say this, I'm realizing this is going to be an overview episode. Like with all of ours, we can't get into every specific because when I thought about like queer holidays, like for so many people that looks completely different. My mind went to how many years of being closeted and being around, family members who had no idea during holidays. This for me will be the first year I'm around family members when I am out of the closet, which I'm looking forward to. We'll see how I feel about that afterwards. I don't know. I've got a great supportive family, so that's nice, but I don't
Awesome.
know. It makes me think about, chosen family. I know we're going to talk more about that in this episode. It makes me think about people who do not have, access to their family of origins or who do not have family because of their identity as a queer person. And I got to throw in the poly piece too, because that's
Oh,
also,
yeah.
a thing around the holidays. If you are non-monogamous and you have different partnerships, especially, I know we've talked about getting out of the hierarchy in previous conversations. If you're a relationship anarchist and you're trying to figure out how do I prioritize my time with partners over the holidays. So there's lots of issues that the holidays bring.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many. And I've already been starting to talk to clients about their different situations. And I'll say for myself, this is the first time I have not had a significant others since I was 23.
Wow.
So this is
Wow.
a brand new experience for me for many reasons. And I think that the other piece that I want to share, which I don't usually share this much in therapy, obviously, but I think that it can be helpful to hear other people's stories. There's this, when we're talking about all these different dynamics in relationship to not only parents, but grandparents, siblings, maybe even old friends that you only see once in a while, like if you live out of town and you do happen to go back to town, back to your hometown and seeing friends from high school or friends from college, the big thing or the one of the themes we'll always talk about is boundaries. And so something that people really debate about is if they want to go visit their friends or their family, or if they're even allowed to, or what that dynamic is. And I will say this is the first year, I'm 41 years old, and I put a really strong boundary. I'm like, I'm not going home. I'm not going to visit. I am not going to hang out with my family this year. And the reason is because I have found how toxic and microaggressions and all of these pieces that I was just like, I get to choose what I want to do. I'm an adult. And so I'm going to not go hang out with them. I'll find
How,
something else to do.
how did it feel to set that boundary?
Ooh, well, I will say right now, it feels fucking awesome. We will see how it feels on the day of the commercialized holidays. I mean, definitely I don't celebrate Thanksgiving at all. So, and for political reasons, and I don't really eat turkey. I'm not fully vegan, but I don't support a lot of things about Thanksgiving, obviously. Like, so, but we'll see when the day comes. But the cool thing is, I'm surrounded by so many queer people, and there's so much chosen family that I get to decide who I want to hang out with and how I want to hang out with them, or I can just hang out at home. We'll see. We'll see.
I was thinking about when you talked about setting that boundary when we had the interview a few weeks back with Tuck, making no pleasurable And I'm glad that there was some pleasure in that for you of like, no, that is my
Yes.
boundary. I felt that way about birthdays. Obviously it's nice. Well, I don't want to say obviously. Maybe people will feel like it is nice to receive phone calls, messages, texts on one's birthday. I don't like being obligated to be on my phone on my birthday. I would
Oh,
rather
yeah, good
not.
point.
So, giving myself the boundary, it's similar with holidays. If I don't have to talk to every single person on this day, I can just enjoy the day.
Yeah. And these navigations are different. So because I'm not partnered right now, I made that choice just on my own. And so I don't have anyone else's family to think about. I made that boundary with my biological family. But for folks that are partnered right now or have multiple partners or however their relationship dynamic is, they're not only having to think about their family, either the family they lived with growing up or their biological family, they also have to think about the other person's family and navigate those conversations. And I find it interesting because I've heard multiple people say hearing different things from different therapists. So I also want to put that out there that what you and I say may not be the same opinion of another therapist.
Likely isn't. And I think I've said it before, but like we don't have the monopoly on mental health. I tell clients this all the time. I am not the expert on all of this. Yes, I have a lot of hopefully valid training that is helpful, but I don't know, you have to take in these messages and sort of internalize and is this sitting right with me?
Yeah, for sure. And I think about, so we already named a couple things that people deal with. I think the other piece is thinking about there's the looking different, there's dressing different, there's with the pandemic, some people haven't seen family in multiple years. And if they've changed, if they've had gender affirming surgeries, if they have anything that changed with their looks, their names, their pronouns, those types of things to be how to prepare for that or how to be empowered to choose not to participate in that and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And what kind of support can people draw from depending on the decision they do make?
Mhm, mhm.
I and so I want to talk about I want to normalize and talk about naming some of the things that people are going to that they might experience or the different experiences of different people. And I also want to make sure that you and I do at some point in this talk about what maybe some strategies or just some things that we noticed throughout the years that have been helpful for the clients. And I can talk about the things that I really strategize, like literally strategize
Like, how
with
do you get
clients.
through regardless
Yes.
of what you're doing? Like, what do I do to make it through this holiday season?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't, if people, I have one more story, or maybe we'll have multiple, and I'd love to hear from you too, Melissa. I just actually remembered I live in Oregon, Portland. I have a lot of family, biological family that lives in Portland, even though I don't see them very often. And I just remembered years ago, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of my family, I realized I wasn't out to some. And I was at this big family gathering and it was Christmas Eve or like sometime around Christmas. And we're sitting around this huge table at some weird rental, whatever place that had been a space that had been rented out. I want to say it was at a church, actually. Do have some major religious background in my family. And all of a sudden we're going around and everyone was like formally introducing everyone. And I had my partner next to me. And I was like, oh shit. Like I am doing a coming out again. And I've like, at that point, it already come out multiple times
Right.
to like different groups of people, different family members, different friend groups. And I'm sitting there like counting, watching as it goes around when it's getting close to my time. And I was just like, hey, this is my partner. And yeah, and just looking at everyone's faces and see the different reactions, and I'm just like, "Breathe, breathe, breathe." And luckily, no one was too much of an asshole. I have one horrible uncle, really horrible uncle, but otherwise, I mean, comparatively, I like as far as that experience was, it wasn't too horrible. But it does even what it makes me think of is we can all be caught off guard. And even if we've come out multiple times, when we're put in front of people we haven't seen in a long time, we may have to come out again
You might
and
not
again.
you might forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait, they don't know I'm not monogamous. Oh, shoot. Oh, they don't know about my pronouns
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever the case may be.
Well, you gave a strategy in your story just there of like breathe, breathe, breathe. Like I go in with those like, okay, feet on the ground, feel the small of my back, and the knees. Go outside and take a breath.
Well, and I was lucky. I had at the time, I'm not partnered with him anymore, but the person I was with, she's just so awesome. And she'd been out for a long time, even longer than me. And so it was helpful. But yeah, the other strategy, which we'll talk more about, is that it was a very time limited event.
Mm-hmm.
And so even whatever was uncomfortable, I was definitely uncomfortable. I think I was even probably turning probably as red as my hat I'm wearing right now, or my beanie. For those who can't see, I'm wearing a big bright red beanie today. And so my face is probably about that color. And I didn't, it was uncomfortable, but it was short-lived. And that is also another strategy, is time limiting. Like if you want to stop by and see family, you can make it very brief. You get to decide how long you interact with people. Yes, boundaries.
I've thought about that a little bit because last holiday season, I had just gone through the divorce and just moved up to Portland. And being in the global pandemic, it made a lot of sense not to travel anywhere and to stay home. I didn't have the energy to even recognize holidays last year. So this is the first time I'm going to be face to face with family members since my coming out. And of course, I came out, on Facebook and Instagram and not like to these people, directly. So that's going to be interesting. And I don't think I'm not concerned about being harmed. I'm not concerned about my safety. I think where I start to feel weird about it is it's going to be the questions, like it's my own meaning making of
Oh,
questions being asked,
yeah.
even about like who I'm friends with. Like I've noticed this even with my folks, like asking about like, oh, and how'd you meet them? I'm like, okay, let me clear this up for you. I've met every one of my friends on a dating app. No, I'm not dating all of them. Yes,
The
I'm dating
queer
people
comment of
of
the
like,
day.
right? Like and it's the whole bisexual thing, it's
Oh,
like if I'm dating a man, if I'm dating a non-binary, like it just, I find myself wanting to give less specifics and
yeah.
just leave everyone wondering because I don't have the time to come, and like my whole life is not about me being queer either.
Yeah.
Like
I
I would
mean,
love for people at the holidays to ask about my job, ask about Portland. Like I'm hoping that bisexuality is like the main topic of conversation,
well,
and certainly not polyamory, because the only way they would know is if they've listened to this podcast. I have not come out, not because I'm closeted, just because I'm tired of coming out for now.
oh yeah. Yeah. And that's another great boundary. Like you don't have to come out if you don't want to. Like I think that's something really important to say, and that you don't have to come out. If you're out to all your friends and you have a partner, but you go see your family and don't want to come out, or if you are solo, whatever, you don't have to come. You don't owe anyone anything. They don't have to know.
Yep.
And I think that piece around like secret versus privacy, like it doesn't mean you're keeping a secret. It means you get to choose. You get to have your privacy and your protection, because you have no idea how someone's going to react. And if you're there all by yourself with your biological family, and maybe you happen to be the only queer person, or let's face it, probably the only out queer person, or if you're the only non-binary trans person, or if you, whatever the case may be, you're not obligated to answer questions or to educate your family on these parts of yourself.
Right. I think as we're talking about this, coming out merits a whole episode in and of its, for itself.
For
But
sure.
maybe it's not always safe to be out,
Yeah.
and it's just really do what is right for you, especially around holidays, which for some folks could be, I mean, gosh, I look at my family member, it's such a high stakes event in my family of everyone's
Yeah.
tensions are high, everyone's been cooking and timing and all these things. Like that's not the energy that I would have wanted for my coming out. Like I just, too much anxiety already, let alone adding a vulnerable piece like that, onto it. And I want to say too, for some folks, again, this is kind of like what we said earlier, that might not feel like it fits for you. Perhaps you have a loving, wonderful, supportive family and you've got this hunch that it's going to go super well and you just want to be okay. That's a different scenario, but you really do have to do what feels right and safe for you.
Yeah, and the other piece when you're talking about food or like the atmosphere, let's not forget how much substances are used during the holidays.
Gosh, yeah.
And Uncle Joe, pounding it down. You have no idea what's going to come out of someone's mouth if they've been drinking or using other substances. Like, we just don't know. So that safety piece, safety, boundaries, we get to choose what information we want to share with people. Another piece that comes up is for folks that are partnered and the situation where, oh, you're allowed, quotations, allowed to come to family gatherings just as yourself, but it's not safe to bring a partner. And navigating that, like, do you still bring the partner? Do you just not attend the event? And I think there can be a lot of judgment within the community around those decisions and really re-emphasizing what you said, Melissa, which is people get to choose for themselves. And there is no right or wrong answer to whether or not to bring a partner to an event.
Right. And it's got, I feel like so many of our episodes were like communication. I guess we wouldn't be therapists if we weren't saying that.
And we're communicating right now.
Exactly. But it is so important. I think about even outside of holidays, events in the past where, again, being at that point still closeted as poly, and at that point closeted as bisexual, inviting partners around who were not my primary and like under this guise of like, oh, they're a friend. And that didn't sit well for me. From what I understand, it didn't sit well from the people I was dating, and I don't blame them for that. And again, this is like a whole other episode, I'm sure. But
All the episodes.
yeah, it's really it's a good idea to have conversations that are open about that, because it can be so just damaging, and there's so much shame in being closeted or not being able to be around somebody in the fullness of like how you actually relate and be like demoted to. So I don't know. I don't like any of that. That's my end cap.
Well, and so then the strategy there is that having these deliberate conversations many weeks before the event and checking in with all of your partners. And I know I definitely went through a phase. There was a time when I was the friend and I was introduced to everybody as the friend. And that was really sucky. That did not feel good. However, in that time of my life and with that particular partner, I didn't feel safe to have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
And she wasn't really amenable to listening. So, I mean, that can also be the case. Again, not my partner anymore. So
Right.
she's choosing different partners after that. But that those conversations that you're talking about, that communication you're talking about is part of the strategy. What would be speaking of strategies? I'm kind of curious to have, if you have a couple more. I know I have a couple that I'm thinking about as we speak about this, but do you have something else that comes to mind as
Well,
having
as you're saying this, Keely, I'm realizing like I got to get some new strategies, because I think that my strategies in the past were like, well, my ex just takes over the conversation and I've got a buffer. Like being partnered was advantageous for me in that way of like, okay, you take these comments, I'll take those ones, and we'll just tag team and get through. Or have that like nonverbal like look across the room and just the nod at each other with wide eyes, like, yep, we're okay, we got this. As a single person, it is going to be different for me this year. My big one, and I have given this to clients too, but it goes back to the boundaries and giving yourself breaks. Give yourself breaks. I'm a person who cannot afford to go. I can afford to go travel to my family. I can't afford to stay in a hotel, which means I'm staying with my parents. And I grew up pretty much as an only child with my parents. So like the trio, like we go right back to that homeostasis.
Uh-huh.
And I am a queer adult who needs space. So I've got to plan that, like the time, making it like time, what do you say? Time constraints, I guess. I've not allowed for just days on end of nothing. I've scheduled things intentionally so that I
Yeah.
am going out to meet a friend for coffee, going to meet somebody for brunch, like doing those things. I think even in the times where it's like all family members together, I might be the one going to the bathroom every hour just so I can have a minute away to
Totally.
take walks, volunteer for those store runs, whatever it is. That's kind of how, if I can vary it up and not be kind of in the same room for too long, that's a good strategy for me.
Yeah, and so along that side of those breaks, what I've worked with people doing is having a plan of how to care for yourself before the event, and my favorite topic, aftercare. How do we do aftercare from a holiday event? What does that look like? So that looks different for everybody, of course, but the post or the pre-care before even going to the event is like, what kinds of things feel good? Like building yourself up or doing something that feels good before the event. So some of the things I enjoy and different people, and please jump in, Melissa, with things that you also think of as pleasurable. Things like going for a swim, hopping in the sauna. These are always at my gym. I going on a bike ride, playing the guitar, talking to a friend who I've known for a long time. I have a friend in New York who I've known since I was 5, and talking to her, and just even for like 10 or 15 minutes before a family event, because she knows me so well and she knows my family and she knows what I've been through, and so that's helpful. Uh,
Have your list of like funny movies to watch
yeah.
afterwards, or even the text going on with friends where everyone just everyone sends one emoji based on how they're doing in this moment of the family experience.
Your
um,
holiday emojis, like
yeah,
the list goes on.
yeah. But I like what you said too, and like make it something pleasurable, not just how do I decompress from this hard
Yeah.
thing, but how do I actually enjoy like my life and my time and being me in this moment.
Yeah, and rituals, what's affirming, and I always think about, like, even for me too, the afterwards. So the beforehand is pleasurable stuff, take lots of breaks while at the event, and then afterwards, I wanna be around queer people.
Mhm.
I want to be around people that are affirming of my gender and affirming of my sexuality, and I want to do things that feel good, and so luckily in Portland, sometimes that involves, there are events going on sometimes that I can hop into or just like go to a friend's house afterwards.
Enter the chosen family and why
Yes.
it is so important and so wonderful, especially this time of year.
And that, speaking of chosen family, we can always talk more and more about things that are pleasurable and things to do before care and after care and breaks. I also want to give everyone permission, including I've already given permission to myself, to spend the holidays with your chosen family. You get to choose whether or not you even acknowledge or talk to any family of origin. You get to just, you can go and have that whatever holiday means for you with your chosen family or one or two people. You can make a date or, you could go hang out by yourself at a Chinese restaurant and have some Chinese food because we know Chinese
Absolutely.
restaurants are going to be open.
You can veto holiday. I last year, like I said, I didn't even have. I had like a tiny Christmas tree, like Charlie Brown style, in my place, and that was all the energy that I could give. It was kind of like the longest, day ever, just waiting for it to sort of end. But
Yeah.
like giving myself permission not to celebrate, not to have to watch all the movies and do all the stuff. For me, I was in a place of depression where it so did not match. It was so jarringly different than the energy of the holidays. I didn't want to watch anything happy and all of these coupley holiday
Yeah.
movies, especially just as a queer person, like there just weren't enough like queer holiday movies that match my experience. Uh, Not that there's more this year, but like, we got to work on that.
There's a couple,
There's
but
a
do they
few,
match
and
our experience,
right.
or are they really worth watching? That's another post to be
Yeah, that's debatable. But
debatable.
yeah, permission just not to celebrate and to be like, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So not only, yes, you could celebrate with your chosen family, you can celebrate by yourself or not celebrate at all and literally just veto the whole situation. And again, our wonderful word of pleasure and bringing that into whatever that means to you. And, as we're talking about this, circling back to the idea that Melissa and I are only two people, we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. We actually have more questions than answers in true therapy style, but we do have some, we had some suggestions throughout today and would love to hear from all of you. And we can create a post on our Instagram account and Facebook account to we want to hear, what are your ideas? What do all of you do? Can we share with all of the listeners and share with people that follow us? What do people do to keep your joy, keep some joy during these holidays?
Yeah. Where is the queer joy? What's your specific survival guide as to how you get through this point of the year? If anyone really loves and enjoys the holidays as a
Yeah.
queer person, tell me more about that, because we do. As we've said before, we want to focus on what's working, and realizing this can be a really challenging period of time of the year. We'd love to know, how are people getting through?
Yeah, for sure. So, always speaking of queer joy,
The queer joy.
Melissa,
I'm like,
what's your queer joy of the week?
do I go with this is going to just give people such a picture of my life. Do I go with the homemade, butternut squash and pumpkin ravioli, or do I go with the pet camera? It's a toss up.
I think you're allowed to have more than one queer joy. So I think you can choose either one or both.
Or both. I'll say both. I had another just really restful, quiet weekend, which I am loving these days. And I say restful. I cooked up a storm. I cooked so much food, and now I get to eat the whole week, and I'm really excited. So it was really fun self-care. It was a good mindfulness activity for me, being in the kitchen for multiple hours and not letting my brain think. But I did also buy a pet camera, and I am now spying on my cats between my breaks and sessions.
So gay.
And
So gay.
I can talk to them through it too. Like, it's really, I think I play with them more when I'm at work now than when I'm at home.
All
I
of
need
you
to look
queer
into
folks
that.
out there, yeah. All of you queer folks out there who also have a pet camera and also watch your pets when you're at work, please let us know. Please let Melissa know. It will make our day. You can even send
Seriously.
clips. Send clips if you want. Share them. It's great. It's a great way to
Or
get
check
through the
out my
workday.
Instagram. And no, I don't put them on my work Instagram, but oh boy. Yeah. No, that is my queer joy.
That's a great queer joy. Well, I will say this weekend, I will mention a couple too, because they kind of slide into each other, because the queer joy is about queer friends. And so the first one was Saturday afternoon. So that Friday, I'd gotten this text and my friend was like, "Hey, do you want to come over and help me get ready for a date?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I do. That sounds great." So helping her get ready for her little date with this new woman. And we ended up watching Tampa Bay's, gonna totally out myself, a new reality TV show for those who like the lesbian reality shows. Yeah. Very drama filled. So that was one. Really fun helping her get ready for a date. The second one was yesterday. And yesterday was Sunday, and it was really fascinating to reflect on the normalcy of yesterday, but it felt so joyful because since the pandemic, there hasn't been opportunities for this. And so what happened is it was just a typical Sunday, but all of a sudden I realized, I'm like, oh, my youngest child is outside the house on a friend date, hanging out with a friend at someone else's house. And then my oldest child was like doing her thing, like painting and introspecty teenager shut in the room. And a friend texted and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, bring the soup over. And I'm just driving back from taking my youngest to their, friend date. So I, go to the grocery store and like grab bread and get some things to make banana bread and like all the things. And like nothing out of the ordinary, but I don't remember the last time that has happened because it's so normal and so I had taken it for granted and so grateful for that joy that I got to experience and just sitting eating soup and playing rummy. That's it. That was it.
I love it. You're right, though. There's so many things that we forget about. I keep telling people this all the time as we're doing sessions and talking about the specific things coming up in people's lives, like not forgetting we're in a pandemic and that
Yeah.
is impacting us on levels that we don't even realize at this moment. Um, and I love that it's just, it feels like these mundane things that have so much more meaning because we don't have access.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so much. And I do have to say, and I may end up editing this later, but so this is a really funny thing I just feel like I should share with people because I've put myself on a no dating, no online dating until 2022. So my 13-year-old loves to remind me. So if I'm hanging out with any friend, anyone, she'll walk by the living room, "Mom, mom, it's not 2022 yet. Mom, it's not 2022 yet." So I have my own
Like I
little,
didn't meet him online.
they're just friend they're just a friend. So that's a little, what do they call it? Like a little teaser for our season 2, how we're gonna start our season 2. It's a little teaser. Season 2 is not till, next year, but little teaser about some of the topics we gonna be talking about,
Where we're headed.
where we're headed. Solo, single,
I'm so
self-love.
I'm so grateful that you've joined me in this solo world. I was getting lonely over here having a relationship podcast as a solo person.
And what does this even mean? Well, on that note, y'all, thanks for joining us today. Yeah,
I was going to give a shout out, Keely,
do
to
it.
our producer who's in charge of making this all sound so glorious.
So thank you everyone for listening today and hope you got some helpful tips and felt like you have other support and other people that are digging, doing the same thing you are. And I hope you have a wonderful, queer, joyful week.
Happy holidays.